Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to yet another episode of the Sports Insiders. I am the sniper, and that is the MLB sports agent himself, Sean Russey. Before we get started, just want to remind everyone to follow us on all of the platforms that we are on. We are on YouTube. You're probably watching this on YouTube right now, so hit the like and subscribe button for all updates and new episodes. We're also on Facebook, X, Instagram, and also got the 2-for-1 special on TikTok, Sideline Sports Entertainment. So, with that being said, and also pay very close attention here in a few weeks because the crew will be down there in the Bay Area covering Super Bowl week for 2026. Um, so that'll be a great time. We'll have, of course, all of our times on Radio Row, opening night, the whole 9 yards. We will be there and we will be broadcasting. So and conducting interviews as well and uploading them from everybody we come across. So more great material. So another year we're covering Super Bowl week. Everything's gonna be fun. So Sean, how's everything going tonight, man?
No, everything's going good, man. We had a great national championship, so everything was going good.
Absolutely, absolutely, man. How about that too, man? Like the Moses, isn't it crazy that Indiana won a natty before Oregon?
Yeah, and then it just came out, I think a few hours ago, it was the most watched national championship ever. And I think probably as the official numbers come out, the game's going to spike there towards the third and fourth to reach those numbers. Because I don't think initially it was hitting those numbers because I think everybody kind of expected an Indiana blowout. And I think a lot of people kind of tuned in around halftime and went, oh shit, Miami's still in this thing.
Yeah, probably so. And the thing is it was only a 10-point deficit, you know. But especially this because you figure you got a team who hadn't been in it and won in a long time versus a team who's never won.
And they
So,
were the home team essentially. So it was
mhm.
one of the things that I think kept Miami in it was the crowd because they went in as almost 9 point dogs until the last day that the spread kind of moved a little bit thanks to heavy
Exactly.
betters on Miami. But man, to be 9 point dogs even in a home game that's a tough win to go get.
Yeah, it is. You're going against the 15-0 Big Ten champions and a Heisman winning quarterback. That helps as well. But this especially kills the narrative of, oh, there ain't going to be any ratings if the SEC ain't in it. Oh, there ain't going to be any ratings if Alabama's in it. Well, the SEC was nowhere to be seen. And for the third straight year, a Big Ten team has won a national championship. You know what's so funny that I was thinking about is Sean, if you took a break from watching college football for like the last 7 years, or let's say you woke up out of a coma, right? And you were catching up, and I told you, hey, for the last 3 years straight, a Big Ten team won a national championship, a different Big Ten team. You would believe me if I told you Michigan. You would believe me if I told you Ohio State. But would you believe me if I told you Indiana?
Especially if I didn't understand the portal and other things that have changed the landscape here. I don't think anybody would ever, at the beginning of the season go, Indiana's a contender.
Exactly. Like if you would have, like if coming into the season, right? It was to be said, okay, a Big Ten team is going to win a national title this year, but not Michigan or Ohio State. What names would have been thrown around? Penn State, especially since they still had James Franklin. Michigan State maybe could have a shocking year, or even the new incoming teams like maybe USC
Yeah,
or
I mean,
Oregon even.
the great thing still right now, at least the way it's set up, is you can win your conference. You can do shitty out of conference and win your conference and still get in there. But I think the Big Ten, kind of like the SEC, it's iron sharpens iron. So by the time they get to the playoff, not that the ACC isn't up to par because Miami clearly showed they were at throughout the whole tournament, but some of these conferences are just built differently, and I think that's kind of what we're going to see more going forward. It's going to kind of lay into what we do tonight. I think the competitive balance, unfortunately, is going to swing towards these bigger conferences even more.
Yeah, indeed. One can only guess what the Pac-12 is going to be next year. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and go because we're not talking about. We had a nice mini convo about college football, but tonight's about Major League Baseball. Okay, so we all have seen that Kyle Tucker. What is it? 60 million a year he's getting.
Yep.
King Tuck is now a Dodger, and he is being added on to an already stacked roster. And it seems like the conversations are getting louder about should there be a salary cap in baseball? And if you're the ones asking it, well, funny you mentioned that. So The top 10 tax teams by cap number. The Dodgers, of course, lead the pack with 400. Man, they're they're almost 200 million clear of the second place team. They're at
No, it's
420.
crazy the amount of money they're spending.
It is absolutely. It's 429 million. Then you got the Blue Jays at 289 million, Phillies at 284 million, Mets at 262, Yankees at 254. They're in the middle of the five. Or the 10, excuse me. The Red Sox are at 276 million. Padres 268. Okay, this is not in any order or anything, but Dodgers clearly on top though. Braves 266, Astros 248, and San Francisco Giants 226 million. After the Cubs got Alex Bregman, they now sit at 256. And also for the first time in luxury tax, so only 2.5 million due compared to the Dodgers' third time in tax, 161 million due and expect to exceed 300 by opening day. Sean, you want to shine some light on this?
Yeah, so Blue Jays and Phillies still have roster spots to fill, so that's expected to hit. Those you'll have three teams over 300. And bless you. And then
Thank
I
you.
think also, with the Mets, coming onto the show, they just acquired Peralta, the ace from the Brewers, today for two young prospects. So they're going to take on even more salary from that 262, which does include the Lewis Roberts deal, which was earlier in the week.
Yeah.
But the 262 is definitely going to jump again now. They'll probably be in the 280, 290 range. I'm not sure what Peralta's deal is, but I think they're taking on a lot of money there. The Mets have gone out and really basically done what a third of the league doesn't want to do, or actually two-thirds of the league if you look at the numbers in terms of 10 top teams being over 200 million. Is they're not trying to keep up pocket-wise with the Dodgers, but the Mets and Phillies are saying, well, if we're going to win the National League, there's really no other choice we have. Even with the five players the Mets lost, they've gone out and they've spent insane money. I know the Dodgers are doing it by deferment, and that's part of the reason their number is not higher, especially with Otani and this recent deal with Tucker. The Mets actually gave Bichette a recent deal, I think 24 hours, 12 hours after the Tucker deal, and it's all up front. He's
Yeah.
getting 40 this year, he's getting 40 next year, he's getting 40 the third year if all the options are picked up. No deferment. So it's interesting to see the tack they're taking too, because they're still paying Bobby Bonilla, and I'm sure that reminds them like, hey, we're not doing deferments, because at the end of the day, I think that's going to come back, a decade from now and really hurt the Dodgers, and they're going to be back to that kind of dwindling franchise that they had been before they kind of got back to spending.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. And uh, uh, yeah, it would be in the Mets' best interest not to do deferments. I don't know if anyone's ever. I'm pretty sure a few have tried ever since Bobby O'Neill, but they were like, "Nah, nah, we already got kicked in the ass once," But
No, and
this,
he still has 2 years or 3 years left on it. I mean, can you imagine if Otani has to retire early, how many years we're going to see the article? It's Otani payday now.
yeah, every single year because they already have Bobby Bonilla Day. I think it's like July the 7th or something,
Yeah.
and it's going to be a there's going to be clearly a Shohei Otani Day. At least our next topic, and that is how the luxury tax affects player acquisitions. Um, oh wait, I'm sorry. Back to the last one real quick because I forgot to do the bottom five. The bottom five, these guys are they're not even at 100 million. So you got the Guardians at 78 million, Rays at 76, Cardinals 67, National 67, and the Marlins at 60 million dollars. The funny part about that is one, two, three. Well, no, not the Cardinals, not the Nats, the Marlins. Yeah, yeah. Three of these five were playoff teams.
Yeah, the Marlins were right in there, fighting to the end. The Rays, they were under 500 this year, but they've done amazing things with that number before.
Mm-hmm.
I believe they were 75 and 86 or something, or 76 and 85, somewhere around there.
Mm-hmm.
The
Well, man,
Guardians obviously won their division, but really out of those five teams, you could look at it and be like, only the Guardians really had a successful year at 80 million this year.
right.
The Cardinals just shipped off Nolan, so they're gonna that number is gonna drop even further. Now I assume they'll retool here soon. But again, it's just one of those things where you're seeing owners push back against, okay, we're going to have a 250 million payroll and have a tax bill due at the end of the season and still maybe not make the playoffs.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I don't think this is the Cardinals' way. I think they're kind of an outlier here because of what we've seen from them in the past in terms of success. But I think you could look at the Marlins, the Rays, and the Guardians and be like, this is kind of how they have to win. They're
Mhm.
not in a strong market. They've got to develop guys. They can afford a star or two, but the rest really has to be in-house development.
Yeah, pretty much so. Okay, and so going on to our next topic now, finally, is how luxury tax affects player acquisitions. So you got the Mets after, like for example, the Mets after Lewis Roberts, they hit the third time taxpayer bracket. So any player acquired at this point could cost the Mets 110%. Same with Dodgers, Phillies, and the Yankees, as all are three-time luxury tax payers. But Roberts makes 20, will cost the Mets 42 million. And the owner reaction to it, owner sentiment after Dodgers acquisition of Tucker is that it will only make firmer the stance a salary cap is needed to reset the competitive balance of the sport. Now, there are some people out there, shout out to JB Ellis, who see nothing wrong with this. But keep in mind, our guy JB Ellis is a Yankees fan. He and the Yankees benefited from this in the 1990s, you know. But you got others out there that are saying like, yeah, I mean, after all, it is the only of the four major professional sports in North America without a salary cap. You figure, right? You know, so why not? But you want to shed some light on anything I just said in the second half?
Yeah, I mean, and especially if you go back to when they really started spending, we'll have to do some more research for the next show. But I'm sure if you compare it for when teams actually started opening up the books, whether it was the 80s or the 90s, the Yankees have more titles than anyone in that time frame. I'm almost positive of it, and it's because Steinbrenner was willing to spend. They didn't really have a whole lot of development per se during that run in the 90s and early 2000s. Um, they acquired pieces. Yes, they had Jeter and Polanco and Riviera, but those are really the three. And then they added piece and piece and piece. I can remember Chuck Knobloch going there, David Justice going there. I think Ron Gant played there for a little bit. Darryl Strawberry. I mean, the list is long of who they acquired over the years during that run. Um, and it's not really changing now. And now you've got the Dodgers. Potentially looking at a three-peat. And I think not that the dynasty is bad for any sport. I think that's good. You're chasing a villain. It's no different than the Chiefs in football. I think someone would have rather seen them go out in the Super Bowl and lose to somebody versus, go out because of a bunch of injuries like they did this year. That doesn't really knock them off. That just means they'll be back next year if they're healthy. Um, but I think what you're having in baseball is you can really truly only compete if you're starting to truly hit this luxury tax threshold at least once or twice. And I think that's what the Blue Jays have figured out. They were not big spenders until recently. In the last 5 to 10 years, they've really spent more than they have historically, and it's the only way they were going to be able to keep up with the Red Sox and the Yankees. Not to mention, because you've got Yankees have their own network. You've got teams funneling in money to the system that other sports just don't really have.
Yeah, and you mentioned Bo Bichette. I wonder if Bichette is the one piece that the Mets need to really get over a hump in the excuse me, in the National League East. Already in a tough division, with I know the Braves had a down year, but they're still the Braves. You figure. Then you got the
Yeah,
Phillies. You got the Marlins who were very competitive this year. I know Washington's kind of Washington right now, but I mean, shoot, New Year, anything can happen.
and
But go ahead.
historically, the Marlins have always given the Mets problems, whether they're good or bad. They're the reason the Mets didn't make the playoffs this year. They knocked them out on the last day. Almost, I think it was 10 years to the day that they knocked them out before. So the Marlins have a history of giving the Mets issues, no matter how good each team is. But I think the Mets did something that we talked about on a previous show with the Cubs in terms of a high amount of strikeouts to hits. Adding Bichette, adding Polanco, adding Marcus Simeon. You've solidified more hits in the lineup versus power and strikeouts. I think it balances off Soto and Lindor. I think it also nullifies. Alonso was the best clutch hitter they've had in probably 2 decades. So that's going to be hard to replace in terms of late inning. We'll see who decides to step up there. But in terms of filling the roster a little differently, where you don't have to depend on the power, I think they've done that well. Lewis Roberts has a chance now to be protected and see what he could truly develop into. It's hard to get a judge on the guy when he's with the White Sox, and he did pretty well there for a couple of years. And after that, they've really kind of sold the farm there. So he had no protection this year. It'll be interesting to see what he does with a Lindor behind him, or if he's behind Lindor and in front of Soto. So I think they fixed that, but they've had to spend a lot of money to get there and to fix those problems. And they were
Yeah.
willing to give up their top prospects to do so, because I think, like most of us know, I don't know the actual number, but 1 out of 20, 1 out of 30 out of these top prospects is actually going to come up and make this huge impact for your franchise. Some other guys may become decent role players or fill in starters, but you
Mhm.
don't have a ton of all-stars just sitting in the farm. If they were all-stars, they'd be called up at 19 like a lot of these international prospects are.
Exactly.
Uh, and that's, kind of the differential there too, is the international talent that these teams is getting are so much better than what they have in the farm right now. It's like, do we go to the farm, or do we just go spend extra money and add to our tax bill?
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. And you know what? It's like, even in the era where the Dodgers are kind of buying their championship, as everyone would say, you still have teams who are willing to play Moneyball and build their roster up like that. And then, because
No,
it's
and
always, it's like, okay, we can get like 1 or 2 stars, right? Or we can, just pretty much home grow everybody. You home grow everybody, and then we'll pay them later. You know?
and we've seen it before, right? The Dodgers look like they're gonna walk to a World Series here, but we've seen it with the Yankees before, where these teams eventually get a little older. The veterans have down years together. We actually thought it was happening last year before they kind of got on that run there at the end. I don't think anybody kind of saw them overtaking the Phillies in terms of beating them in a playoff series the way it was going in early August for them. But come late
Mhm.
September, they were the Dodgers again. Um,
Yeah.
so I think it's tough when you've got the ability to have 10 million per slot 1 through 9 versus a team like the Rays, who, if they did that, would be over what they currently spend on 25 guys.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much.
And I think what's going to happen though, unfortunately, and I'm sure the players have been made aware already, is they're going to have to strap in. I don't see this not leading to a work stoppage when the CBA expires here at the end of this season.
Yeah, because they're,
You know,
they're already saying the S word after the season.
yep, there's a salary cap would require a floor as well, kind of like the NFL does,
Hmm.
where it requires teams to hit a limit. I know, just off the top of my head, I know Atlanta, Tennessee, and one other team was in danger of not hitting the 3-year average, and that then costs you draft picks, and then eventually leads to further penalties. The MLB, if they do this, have to look at that type of structure, because I'm guessing, kind of like the NBA, they're not just going to do away with luxury tax; they're going to keep it involved in some fashion. But you've got to start heightening the penalties. I think obviously the penalties right now, by just increasing the bill, and I know some of it, when you hit a third time, you have some less movement to trades and salaries you can take on in a trade and things like that. I just don't think it does enough in terms of, when free agency comes, you could still go spend, like, you're the Rays and you've got $300 million difference between you and the Dodgers. Um, and they're like, oh, we've got 300. No, I think if you set a cap, you've still got to hit the penalties, and you've got to make sure there's a floor. So teams like the Rays, do come up a little bit, even more so than maybe they're comfortable with. But if it's over a 3-year period, they can still come up 1 year and then keep two down years and still hit the average.
Yeah.
We see it in football all the time. They play with it. They play with it. They'll hit it the third year, and then the next 2 years they'll empty it back out.
Right.
Um, but I think it's going to be a long argument. I think owners are kind of tired of having to try to keep up with 4 or 5 teams that are able to do it because of markets, TV deals, other deals that they just have funneling in. Like, I think the Yankees have a beverage deal similar to like the Cowboys and Pepsi. Those are things that, like, the Tampa Bay Rays can't count on a beverage deal. The Washington Nationals can't count on a beverage deal. These are some of the things that, I'm not saying you take that away from them, But if they're able to spend it and continue to spend over the threshold, you've got to be at least a little more penalized, because obviously the penalties right now not scaring these teams off from spending a lot of money.
No, no, not at all. But we also, I think the judgment is going to come after the season is over with, and seeing if it does lead to a stoppage. But other than that, that's our show for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in to the Sports Insiders. Tune in to Top Rope Talk on Monday. It'll be myself, this guy right here, Sean Russi, and also Jacob Christner. We'll do a recap of this Saturday's WWE Saturday Night Main Event and our official Royal Rumble preview and predictions. So tune in on Monday. Also tune in to the Gauntlet tomorrow night. We've got a Championship Sunday preview, Pats Broncos, Rams Seahawks. So definitely tune in for that. And we will see you all next week.